So I woke up so sad. A couple days ago, I realized that the reason why I scroll is not because I'm bored, it's because I'm sad and miserable, and because I was numb my whole life. I never knew it, and saying I'm bored was like helped me in a way, because back then I wouldn't have tools to handle being sad, being depressed, being miserable, because back then it wasn't a thing. So my body just associated that with boredness. So every day for the past 6 years, I come back from work and I scroll until I go to bed. I don't get out of bed. I don't, sometimes I'll do stuff, but every day I scroll. And I thought it's because I need the stimulation because I'm always bored. But now I understand that, no, I wasn't bored. That's a feeling of depression. That's a feeling of sadness and miserableness. I went back and saw, I was looking at some pictures the other day, and I felt like this new emotion, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was miserable back then. And, I keep on going through all these more pictures, and I'm like, oh, I was miserable then, I was miserable then. And then I'm thinking about my upbringing, and I'm like, oh, wow, I was miserable my whole life. I'm like, I wonder if I'm miserable right now. And so I'm thinking, I'm looking up what's miserable, and I'm like, this state of unhappiness, chronic unhappiness, and stuff like you have no aspirations for life. And I was like, that's me. I feel so I guess I am miserable. And so I'm doing more research, and because I'm on ketamine, it brings up more emotions, and I can feel now. It unfreezes me because I'm still in I'm not in shutdown, but I'm in freeze, so I have to unfreeze my emotions. And so ketamine helps me do that. It brings them up, and I can process them and feel them for the first time. Once I feel them, I can connect the dots to the past, and was like, oh, I felt this, and it just lets me process emotion. So that's what happened with this one. So I realized my whole life I was sad and depressed and miserable, and so I scroll to give myself the dopamine hit, not because I'm bored, but because my levels are becoming too low. My depressed levels are become too low, and that's where limerence and some other stuff just step in, because I don't have a way to pull myself up. So after realizing that I'm chronically depressed and chronically unhappy and chronically miserable, and I've been like this for my whole child, I was thinking of memories of when I was 4 and 5 with my mom, and I thought I was bored, but I was showing signs of misery when I was 4, and that made me cry, because my whole life I've been unhappy and depressed. And the more I realized how much I lacked as a child. I had I lived at a home, and it was a nice home. They gave us good stuff, but my needs were not met at all, and my system shut down because of it. But then I never got to feel those emotions as a child when you're growing through pre-teen, pre-adulthood. I never had that. I just shut down. So I grieve so hard these days, because I realize this wasn't my fault. Yes, I'm taking it and healing, but I was really given nothing to help me for the future. And so today I woke up and I feel this sadness, depression. There's heavy, and when people said they feel heavy, I never understood it until I have it. I have IFS release, so my different I'm fragmented, so my different fragments will show up, and I'll feel oh, I feel hopelessness. This is the part of me that was so hopeless as a child, and in order for me to survive, I just compartmentalized it and then moved on. I would not think about it, it's still there, but then move on. And so that's what I did my whole life, and I fragmented myself so bad, but it was the only way I can survive. So I've got 16, 17 different fragments of me that operate on their own. I don't operate in unison. So that's why at one moment I could feel two different conflicting emotions. Like I'll be sad, I'll be annoyed that someone's talking to me, and then I'll see this person walk past me and I'll be so sad that he was talking to her and not him. I'll feel both of them at the same time because both of my systems are, they have their own feelings, and so they'll show up, and it's really hard to try to navigate that and learn how to heal. But I'm trying my best. But this morning I had the heaviness, like a blanket over me, and I got on social media. I started scrolling as soon as I could, and I'm just like scrolling, trying to find something. But scrolling doesn't work anymore, because now I know I'm not bored. And in my head, if I'm bored, I'm like, oh, scrolling will help, it'll give me something to think about, but now I know that's not boredom. It's misery, and it's depression, and it's sadness. It hits harder. So I'm scrolling, but in my mind I know that scrolling's not going to help me. So I scroll for an hour and a half, and then I get off of social media. Then I close my eyes and start maladaptive daydreaming. That helps a little bit. But then I go to sleep for a couple like, the thing is, an hour, and I start like not REM sleep, but like emotional processing. So I'm having dreams. I'm having a dream about Hope and the characters in Hope, and I'm feeling the emotions. I see Miss Julie. She was nice, but very like, I'm nice, but I'm gonna do my thing. And for me, and it's not her, but it's like the feeling I got from her, it represents the feeling of like what I felt a lot of in Hope. Like people would help me out, but they wouldn't really invest much of me, and they'd be like, okay, bye, and Miss Chris was there, and I was in my dream, I was avoiding her, and at Hope I always avoided her, because I still don't know why. I know that I didn't hate, but I did not like the Higgins, because I knew that they didn't like me, I think. And I don't really know like more of it, but I knew that there was something there. Or like, I don't know, I still don't know why, but I always avoided them. I avoided them in my dream, I avoided them in real life. And so it's like I'm emotionally processing all this stuff. And then I wake up and I still feel this sadness. So I get up, I'm like, let me go outside, get some sunlight. And then I sit in my car and I start like doing breath work. I just start bawling because I have to release this. Whenever I feel like the sadness, the only way I can get over it is by releasing, it's by crying. And so like I see that fragmented, compartmentalized person, and I see it in the mirror. It looks angry, it looks sad. Not sad, but it looks angry, like serial killer angry. And I sit in the car and I'm like, this is the fragmented person that had to carry my depression, my sadness, these emotions for my whole life. Like, if you had to carry those three emotions, like, what would you do? Like, how would you show up? Like, how would you look? Like, would you and yeah, so it showed up. I cried for about 10 minutes in my car. I feel good now because I just cried. It's crazy how I've got to cry and then I feel better because I release it. But yeah, that part of me that I released was just so traumatized, and because it had to hold three huge emotions. Like the way I felt, it was just crazy. And imagine having to feel that every day of your life. Like, what would you do? And so I understand like now the pain and stuff like that, but I did release it, and I cried, and now I feel better. And like with healing, it's like you release it, but you only release layers of it. You can tell by the cry. I had like such a deep gut cry, so I know I released a lot of it, but not all of it. So I'll keep on feeling this. It'll keep coming until I just release more of it, and I can sit in the feeling of being, miserable and sad and depressed. And the more I like accept the feeling and learn, then the more I'll feel better. I still don't know how to go for this because, you know, with the ketamine, on session 4, I've had a couple days of happiness, and I'm like, oh wow, I feel happy, and I'm like, nope, I don't like. And I was like, I feel like I'm on drugs, but it's like, looking back, I'm like, nope, that's just what normal people feel like. And so it's like crazy that I've never felt that my whole life, until I started taking ketamine. So I was very depressed, sad kid, miserable kid, and yeah. But every time I cry, I do feel, I do thank the Lord, because I do, you know, I cry a lot anyways, but I pray that I cry more and I release more, because the only way to heal is to cry and release, you know, for me, and journal to process. But yeah, I really like crying and releasing trauma, and so I'm happy now. Not happy like a normal person, but I feel just flat. And so it's crazy because now that I know I scroll because of this, and scrolling is not going to help me feel better, I'm not scrolling as much. So yeah. And maybe my RBF will change because I don't feel like, you know, I have the RBF. My RBF is tied to, you know, that compartmentalized part of me that's chronically depressed, unhappy, sad. And it's like, now that I'm releasing it, maybe like my RBF is like this. And people think I'm like, she's angry. And it's just like, yeah, I know. But it's like, now that I release parts and parts of it, like, it'll be